Aha, and we're live, folks. Hello there, out there on YouTube. I hope you can all hear me okay. I've got a wee green thing from my light, a wee green light going from my sound machine. I've just literally landed, so I'm a bit just happy to be there. Oh, goodness gracious, yes, I thought I wouldn't make it on time. It's nearly 9 o'clock. Fortunately, it's 20:15, so not late at all. So if anybody's out there in the meantime, say hello. We'll get going shortly once it hits 9 o'clock with chapter 59 of our Children of Dune book club. Aha. Interesting one tonight. A little bit longer than what we've had recently. In fact, there we go, folks. There's 9 o'clock. So I will say hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. My name's Dr. Sloan, and welcome to my science fiction station, also known as the Doghouse. And tonight we're continuing with our Children of Dune by Frank Herbert book club, and we're on chapter 59. At this point, after this we have 5 chapters to go, which is great. We're nearly at the end of the book. We've got quite an interesting chapter ahead. A couple of interesting terms that I find a wee bit problematic. Maybe we can have a chat about them. But in terms of what we've got ahead, how many weeks till we finish? Let's just take a wee quick check. So for next week, chapter 60 is only 4 pages. Chapter 61 is about the same. So we will have a double chapter for next week of 60 and 61, because that's very doable. Then we'll have chapter 62, which is the longest chapter that we have. 13 pages. We'll have that as one episode. And then, let me see, 63 looks like about 6 pages, if I'm not mistaken. And then 10 for the final chapter. So we'll have basically, how does that work? 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters ahead, but we're only going to do 4 episodes. 2 of them are short, and we can clubber them together, which is good. So let me just get organized here, folks, and get my copy of the book open. Hope you're all keeping well, by the way. My office is a little bit tidier. It's that time of year where my students are starting to come back, which means I generally have to keep the place a little bit tidier, or just in general move things around a bit. Pardon me. Right, so there we are. Paperweight is the one thing I'm looking for. There we go. That's us. Chapter 59. Interesting chapter, this one, I think. There we go. This is about 8.5 pages. It was something like that. Yes, indeed. There's Bojack Harkness saying hi. All hi, Bojack. How you doing? Hope all's well with you. Pardon me. Just getting organized, and we're about to get started. A little bit more. Oh goodness, meat to this chapter, I think. But we've got an interesting kind of. How would we put it? A sort of 3-way encounter going on with Gurney Halleck, Leto II, and his kind of new metamorphosized, if you like, form, and the preacher. And I think that what we have is a very interesting chapter that has a little motif, I think, behind it of vision and blindness, and maybe willful blindness, that kind of thing. If you see what I mean. I think eyes and vision are quite important in this chapter. We have a little bit of a sort of superhuman action from Leto. And I suppose also that the bulk of what we're kind of seeing is actually being told in retrospect, because what we have really is Gurney Halleck sort of sitting, gathering his thoughts and remembering what has occurred previously. So it's one of those little things that Frank likes to do, where we're bouncing back and forward in time, and we're getting a little bit caught up with events as they go. Because from the previous chapter, the way we left things, pardon me, pretty much this situation with Ganima, Hara, and Stilgar, get the sense that, again, that Farad'n's on the way, this kind of thing. That there's big change ahead, Ooh, right. So what else, just before we get going? yeah, just for what's ahead, I've kind of activated a membership thing, mainly because YouTube's kind of looking for me to do it on the channel. But for the year ahead, hopefully, we're going to start presenting a little bit more content here for you. In doing so, we're going to once a week we're going to be running the God Emperor of Dune book club over the next year. But in addition to that, we're hopefully going to be doing an additional live broadcast once a week where we're going to do a Doc Sloan's kind of A to Z of science fiction, if you like, with it, which is a nice little structure to it and something that we can do live each week and pick topics and have a chat about them, as well as trying to sort of produce a few more videos, etc. So we're trying to get a wee bit of a different way of working for the next year ahead and spend a bit more time online here. So first up, folks, here we have epigraph number 59. Muad'Dib was disinherited, and he spoke for the disinherited of all time. He cried out against that profound injustice which alienates the individual from that which he was taught to believe, from that which seemed to come to him as a right. And this is from the Magdanet, an analysis by Hark al-Ada. So he was disinherited. I suppose we're going to see some of that disinheritance in this chapter in relation to his vision, if you like. But that he spoke for the disinherited of all time, for all people who've ever existed who've been like him. He cried out against that profound injustice which alienates the individual from that which he was taught to believe, from that which seems to come to him as a right. That's an interesting little statement. Yeah, I've kind of grown up alienated from what I was taught to believe, if you see what I mean. It's an interesting little statement. And I guess in this sense, it really does apply to Paul the man, Paul the myth within this chapter, I think. So, right, as always, folks, if anybody's got any wee comments or questions, let me know. It's Friday night. We're on a wee bit early. Apologies for not getting on last night. I could have done. The truth was, I was absolutely frazzled, just ready to fall asleep by the time I don't know, by about 7 o'clock. So I don't like to do these programs when I'm absolutely shattered. So a good night's sleep, basically, and a good chunk of napping as well today have got me all bright and perky to do this chapter. So that's really why, folks. But as we do here, that if we can't run on the Thursday, which is our normal night, that we'll try and run on the Friday for whatever reason. So there we go. So apologies to everybody, but I was absolutely shattered. I would have been no use to you at all. So here we go. We have Gurney Halleck sat on the butte at Shuloch with his balisette beside him on a spice fibre rug. Below him, the enclosed basins swarmed with workers planting crops. The sand ramp up which the cast-out had lured worms on a spice trail had been blocked off with a new quannet. Plantings moved down the slope to hold it. So we've got a little bit of our sense of ecology within that, our grass plantings, etc. The quannets are basically what have been worm traps here. Those kind of grass plantings to hold down the slope, to hold it, etc., is fundamental to all of the ideas in Dune, I think, because that goes back to Frank Herbert's, the article that he never wrote. They stopped the moving sands. Is that what it was called? Excuse me, which was investigating the use of barrier grasses in Oregon, I believe, at the time. And we've actually very recently, and I don't know where you'll find it, on one of our discussions, that we had an update on that situation after all of these years, and that the environmental solution had caused new types of problems. That I think damaging the desert itself. That's kind of interesting. And it's a great picture to open with, isn't it? By the way, in this chapter, if we use our imaginations, we can imagine Gurney Halleck sitting on this butte at Shuloch, that kind of Dune Gothic, if you like, in the background, with his balisette beside him on a spice fibre rug. There couldn't be a more kind of I don't know, Frank Herbert Dune type picture, if you like, to set up here. I think it's a good picture to paint the open with. So it was almost time for the noon meal, and Halleck had been on the butte for more than an hour, seeking privacy in which to think. Humans did the labour below him, but everything he saw was the work of melange. Leto's personal estimate was that spice production would fall soon to a stabilized 1/10 of its peak in the Harkonnen years. Stockpiles throughout the Empire doubled in value at every new posting. 321 leaders were said to have bought half of Nova Brun's planet from the Mutuli family. Pardon me, I need some fluids. Excuse me, folks. Interestingly enough, I suppose we have I've done a wee diagram for this one. There we go. Up there. Sorry. Our wee planet. Half of Nova Brun's planet costs 321 litres of melange. I've just made a wee note. It's interesting that it's not Solaris, if you like, but that melange production is going to decrease by 90%, basically. Here, and that this is the work of melange. Humans did the labour below him, but everything he saw was the work of melange. What people will do for it. It's the real currency of the Empire, if you like. Now, Nova Brun's planet, I have no idea. I kind of figured that there should be an apostrophe in there. To be honest with you, let's have a wee nosy. If we can find oh goodness, I forgot that I got lots of comic books this week. Here we go. Let me just see if I can find it in the Berkeley Online edition. Nova Brun's. Yeah, it looks like it's the same here. Capital L, Nova Brun's, half of Nova Brun's planet. I figured that should be Nova Brun with an apostrophe S. That the Nova Brun, that's possessive. But neither edition that I'm using has the apostrophe. In terms of what the word means, usually our planets and things like that tend to have meanings or relate to. We find all sorts of myths, etc., through things like Higneus and stuff. But this one, I've got nothing much for it, except that if we break the word up, Nova and Bruns, it's a combination basically of novum, which is the Latin for 9, and then Bruns could be basically from Old German and Dutch. Similar to is the word for brown or shining, as in such like names like Bruno, for example. So the 9th shining planet, perhaps, is an etymology that you could get from that. But apart from that, I've got nothing. So if anybody's got any ideas on Nova Bruns, but as I said, if you separate it, you get Nova, Novum, 9, Brun, shining, if you like, or brown, the 9th brown planet, the 9th shining planet. I suppose the other thing that we get a reference to X being the 9th planet within the Dune series as well, don't we? But yeah, that's all I've got etymologically speaking for it. As for the Mutuli family, I think this word comes from the Medullae. Other names of which four are the Medulloi, the Medullorum, and the Medulloi. But the Medullae, as mentioned by Pliny, are a Gaulish tribe from good old-fashioned Roman times, from the Upper Maurian Valley. The name of the word suggested that I think possibly works best for them, for the Medullae, is from a Celtic word medu, meaning mead. So it essentially means the Medullae are those who drink mead, which is an interesting thing. I don't know if any of you've tried mead. I quite like it, but it's very, very sweet. Not that I don't drink anymore, but I used to quite like it. And a friend of mine, his parents used to have it quite a lot. You get it from is it the Lindisfarne monks and stuff like that still make it. Pardon me. So a little bit more obscure, these kind of references, unless somebody does have something that I can figure there. So the Matuli family, possibly a reference to the Maduli, a Gaulish tribe, as I said, from the upper Moraine Valley. And Nova Brun's planet, again, the 9th shining planet, if you want. But we've just basically got a world put up for sale for I don't know, not that many kind of liters of melange, if you like. So the value amongst, I'm assuming, the houses of the Landsrat, all of this kind of stuff, we're being told it's stockpiles throughout the Empire doubled in value at every new posting. Not good, that, is it? There's Carlos Crescelia saying, hey guys, hey Doc. Hi Carlos, how you doing? Hope you are keeping well. Thanks very much for joining us. Yeah. So there we go. This is the beginning, I suppose, of how would we put this? This is the beginning of Leto II's what's the phrase I'm looking for? Hang on. Hydraulic despotism. That's it. That's what we're looking for. This is the beginning of it, if you like, where he's going to fundamentally mess with how much melange is out there. It would soon fall to a stabilized. He intends to keep it at 1/10 of its peak in the Harkonnen years. So 1/10 of when it's been really good, if you like. How are you posting 321? Yeah, so that's how much. So you can buy a planet with if you have a decent amount of melange these days. It's interesting with the way economics are working at the minute and how much things are worth. Everything's gone a bit crazy since COVID, hasn't it? Financially, economically speaking. Sorry. So the cast out worked like men driven by a devil, and perhaps they were. Before every meal, they faced the Tanzaruft and prayed to Shai Hulud, personified. That was how they saw Leto. And through their eyes, Halleck saw a future where most of humankind shared that view. Halleck saw a future where most of human... Oh, sorry, I've written that twice, by the looks of it. Yes, indeed. Sorry about that. That's me being a wee bit narrow vision whenever I was doing my notes. I'll read that again, folks. Halleck saw a future where most of humankind shared that view. Halleck wasn't sure he liked that prospect. Let me just check if I've done that right. Halleck saw a future where most of humankind shared that view. Halleck wasn't sure he liked the prospect. Yes. Sorry about that. I just rewrote that out there. Now, basically, the cast out now view Leto II here as Shai Hulud personified, if you like, as perhaps an avatar of the worm god. And we've also here got, by the way, it's the people doing the work. It's people as tools, the Fremen as a tool for economical change here. It's the humans that are doing the labor. They're the tools for change here. But everything he saw was the work of melange. I think that's quite important. So the cast out are now working for Leto II as laborers, basically. And they worship him. And Gurney's not too sure, using, kind of looking at it, the whole situation in microcosm with here. Gurney's kind of applying that to the rest of the Empire and is not too sure that he likes what he sees, basically. Okay, let's see. Leto had set the pattern when he brought Halleck and the preacher here in Halleck's stolen thopter. With his bare hands, Leto had breached the Shuloch Quanet, hurling large stones more than 50 meters. When the cast-out had tried to intervene, Leto had decapitated the first to reach him using no more than a blurred sweep of his arm. He hurled others back into their companions and had laughed at their weapons. In a demon voice, he'd roared at them, "Fire will not touch me. Your knives will not harm me. I wear the skin of Shai-Hulud." The cast-out had recognized him then and recalled his escape, leaping from the butte directly to the desert. They prostrated themselves before him, and Leto had issued his orders. So effectively, they're his to command now. As usual, when somebody gets killed within the Dune series, because it happens to an awful lot of people, I've gone and done a little doodle for their weapons being laughed at, guy losing his head, and we have our little skull down at the bottom. Cast out, rest in peace, decapitated by Leto II. Excuse me, just dropping pens down here. Goodness. So, and his abilities here are superhuman, aren't they? He's chucking rocks, large stones, more than 50 meters. A quick of his hand, and off comes some guy's head. And he just laughs at them in his demon voice, and again using voice probably here to manipulate the cast out. And their superstitious nature, everything about them is absolutely ready to be manipulated in this way. But at the same time, the interesting thing is that Leto II's abilities are really quite apparent to them. He's not some mythical story. He's in actuality a reality in their lives, decapitating people with a sweep of his hand, you know. So here we go with Leto again. He'd issued his orders. "I bring you 2 guests. You will guard them and honor them. You will rebuild your Quanat and begin planting an oasis garden. One day I'll make my home here. You will prepare my home. You will sell no more spice, but you will store every bit you collect." On and on he'd gone with his instructions, and the cast-out had heard every word, seeing him through fear-glazed eyes, through a terrifying awe. Here was Shai-Hulud come up from the sand at last. So, 2 guests here, you're going to look after them. You're going to rebuild the Quanat that's been destroyed, start planting a garden, and we're told that one day he's going to move here. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be what's happening here with the Tanzaruf and Shuloch, etc., is going to become Leto's Sarir, I think, his own private little desert. "You will prepare my home, no more spice to be sold, but they're going to store every bit that you collect." So we can assume again that no more spice. This is where it begins, but ultimately I think that's going to be the fate of spice production on the whole planet. It's going to be interesting to see how this is carried out, what the consequences of this are in the next Dune novel. On and on he'd gone with his instructions, and the cast-out had heard every word, seeing him through fear-glazed eyes, through a terrifying awe. They're absolutely scared of him. They're terrified of him. He was Shai-Hulud come up from the sand at last. And again, we were talking, I suppose, the other week, the previous chapter about the Fremen finding husks of dead worms, and how, if you think about how terrifying would it be to find the dead body of your god, if you like, or something that you worship like that. Here's the flip side of that. Here's something that's, I suppose, to the Fremen equally scary, but is to them a manifestation of that god living in a form similar to theirs. That he's come up out of the desert. "Fire will not touch me, knives will not harm me. I swear, I wear the skin of Shai-Hulud." And he's taking control. So there'd be no intimation of his metamorphosis when Leto had found Halleck with Gaithine al-Fali in one of the small rebel sieges at Gurney. With his blind companion, Leto had come up from the desert along the old spice route, travelling by worm through an area where worms were now a rarity. He'd spoken of several detours forced upon him by the presence of moisture in the sand, enough water to poison a worm. Pardon me. They'd arrived shortly after noon and had been brought into the stone-walled common room by guards. The memory haunted Halleck now. So this is a little bit of exposition how they got here, through sort of the memories of Gurney Halleck, if you like. Gaithine al-Fali was the Fremen, if you remember all the way back, that had the Lady Jessica's back, basically, that had come to petition Alia all the way back, whenever Jessica's attacked, that assassination attempt there. So that's where Halleck has taken up shelter with, if you like, in the meantime, until he's hooked up with these lot. Leto and the preacher. On the desert along the old spice route, we're told travelling by a worm in an area where worms are now rare, and they've had to take several detours because of moisture in the sand, enough water to poison a worm. The memory haunted Halleck. So this is the preacher. This is Gurney. He'd said, striding around the blind man, studying him, Halleck recalled the stories about him. No stillsuit mask hid the old face in siege, and the features were there for memory to make its comparisons. Yes, the man did look like the old duke for whom Leto had been named. Was it a chance likeness? So Paul does look like Leto the First. We know this from Dune, that the only thing that, basically, if we want to know what Paul Atreides looks like, we're told in the book that in all things he looks like his dad, basically, except for at the beginning of Dune, it's his size. It's just he's small for his age, but in all other things he's like his father. And we get that kind of thing that Leto the First looks a bit. In fact, it's a running thing that almost all of our main protagonists down through the Dune series I believe look like Leto the First. I think Miles Tegg looks like Leto the First as well. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't got there in a while, so don't hold me to that. But I'm pretty sure he does. So basically, he's walking about, checking Paul out in a way, studying him, and recalling the stories about him. This is, I suppose, the preacher, this blind man. And we have to remember, by the way, that Gurney Halleck is not around for the events in Dune Messiah, is he? He's actually on Caladan with Jessica, as far as I can remember. So the blinding of Paul, whatever it's done to Paul's face, etc., would be new to him. Time has gone by, that kind of thing. So he did look like the old duke for whom Leto had been named. Was it a chance likeness? Pardon me, and this is Gurney. So you know the stories about this one? Halleck asked. Speaking in an pardon me, I've got hiccups. So I've had hiccups all day today. Speaking in an aside to Leto, that he's your father had come back from the desert. I've heard the stories. And that's Leto responding. Halleck turned to examine the boy. Leto wore an odd stillsuit with rolled edges around the face and ears. A black robe covered it, and sand boots sheathed his feet. There was much to be explained about his presence here, how he'd managed to escape once more. Why do you bring the preacher here? Halleck asked. In Jacurutu, they said he works for them. No more. I bring him because Alia wants him dead. So, you think this is a sanctuary? You are his sanctuary. All this time the preacher stood near them, listening, but giving no sign that he cared which turn the discussion took. He has served me well, Gurney, Leto said. House Atreides has not lost all sense of obligation to those who serve us. House Atreides, I am House Atreides. You fled Jacurugi before I could complete the testing which your grandfather ordered. Sorry, your grandmother orders. Sorry. Apologies, I'll read that again. You fled Jacurugi before I could complete the testing which your grandmother orders, Halleck said, his voice cold. How can you assume? He's cut off here. This man's life is to be guarded as though it were your own. Leto spoke as though there were no argument, and he met Halleck's stare without flinching. Jessica had trained Halleck in many of the Bene Gesserit refinements of observation, and he detected nothing in Leto which spoke of other than calm assurance. Jessica's orders remained, though. Your grandmother charged me to complete your education and be sure you're not possessed. I've written probably next to that as he failed. I just wanted to point out the other week, I think I said, and I haven't read ahead. I'm doing the notes as I go each week. It's a good way of keeping it fresh for me. I thought that I think I said that both Gurney and who am I thinking on? Duncan Idaho hate that both of them were free of the Atreides. It seems I was wrong. Gurney is still very much involved with the Atreides, if you see what I mean. Still one of their servants, perhaps, and it's trying to figure out how much is it to the Atreides, how much of it is to perhaps Jessica. Yeah, so it was just, I don't think I had got that right. So your grandmother charged me to complete your education and be sure you're not possessed. I'm not possessed. Just a flat statement. Why did you run away? Namri had orders to kill me no matter what I did. His orders were from Alia. Are you a truth-sayer then? I am. Another flat statement filled with self-assurance. And Ganima as well? No. Now, your grandmother charged me to complete your education, be sure you're not possessed. I think in that Gurney has failed, I think. Whatever Jessica's plan, as much as he's done his best to carry it out, it's not gone the way that it should have. I suppose ultimately Leto's idea of a plan has intervened. I think Leto's plan has taken over it. There's a trade saying Teg did have features ascribed to Leto the First by some of the Bene Gesserit in Heretics and Chapter House tunes. Thank you very much, Atreides. Good to ask in Atreides. Yes, indeed. Do you look a bit like Leto the First yourself? Yes, indeed. I think it's an interesting thing. Again, very much evolution throughout the entire Dune series is probably the main dominant theme through all 6 books. And yes, indeed, there's a lot of kind of, again, that self-similarity within the books. Characters looking like certain characters, etc., etc. Thank you very much for that, Atreides. The only other thing I was just going up to say there is I'm not possessed, is what Leto says, just a flat statement. I've written next that. Is that a lie? Question mark. And again, it's something that I can't remember quite, but I'm trying to figure it. It's one of those things that's answered in the last chapter by Leto. So I think, is that possible? That's an outright lie. There, as in I'm not possessed. So, are you a truth-sayer then? I am. Another flat statement filled with self-assurance from Ganima as well. No. The preacher broke his silence then, turning his blind sockets towards Halleck, but pointing at Leto. I like that. So looking one way and pointing at someone else. And this is the preacher saying, you think you can test him? So we were talking about vision just before we pile on with this in this chapter. I've got to like this, actually. I've been trying to do it for how long? Half an hour. We were saying just at the start of the episode here, eyes, vision, blindness, willful blindness, looking and not looking at people, if you like, I think is a big part of this chapter. So it kind of begins here with this kind of looking at and pointing at that. You think you can test him? This is Gurney here. Don't interfere when you know nothing of the problem or its consequences, Halleck ordered, not looking at the man. And again, I've written here, is he being willfully blind here? Does he not want to look at Paul or the preacher at this point? Right, I'll color that in. There we go. Now, this is the preacher. Oh, I know its consequences well enough, the preacher said. I was tested once by an old woman who thought she knew what she was doing. She didn't know, as it turned out. Halleck looked at him then. You're another truth-sayer. Anyone can be a truth-sayer, even you, the preacher said. It's a matter of self-honesty about the nature of your own feelings. It requires that you have an inner agreement with truth, which allows ready recognition. Why do you interfere? Halleck asked, putting hand to Chris' knife. Who was this preacher? I'm responsive to these events, the preacher said. My mother could put her own blood upon the altar, but I have other motives, and I do see your problem. Oh? Halleck was actually curious now. The Lady Jessica ordered you to differentiate between the wolf and the dog, between Zeb and Caleb. By her definition, a wolf is someone with power who misuses that power. However, between wolf and dog, there is a dawn period where you cannot distinguish between them. That's close to the mark, Halleck said, noting how more and more of the siege had entered the common room to listen. How do you know this? So there are people gathering here, which makes me think effectively that the preacher is preaching in a way. What we've got essentially is this idea that Lady Jessica ordered you to differentiate between the wolf and the dog. Leto the wolf or Leto the dog, I suppose. Which one is it? What are and by her definition, so what is a wolf to the Lady Jessica? Is someone with power who misuses that power. It's very, very interesting for anybody. I don't know if anybody's read Lone Wolf and Cub. The fact that they're called Lone Wolf and Cub is kind of a play on the samurai Ogami Ito's name, I think, which is kind of like a pun on, it sounds like the word for wolf in Japanese or something like that. But very interesting, the characteristics of the wolf belonging to this this Ronin and his baby. If you like, particularly we talked about Diagro, is that the child of a wolf is still a wolf. Very interesting enough. Made me think a little bit about this. So, what are the qualities of a wolf, if you like? We've been told it's someone with power. So, therefore, what are the qualities of a dog? And more importantly, I suppose, it's not what are the qualities of a dog. What are the Lady Jessica's definitions? What's her definition of the qualities of a dog? I wonder. And it opens up all sorts of things. We often joke about this being the dog house. We talk about Greek philosophy, etc. But to be dog-like is to be cynical, isn't it? It's and the qualities of the dog, I think, are quite important to cynicism. If you know anything about, for example, Diogenes. But what are the qualities of a dog? Loyalty, bravery, fun. There's so many good qualities for the dog, but I get the sense that it's more of like a pet that can be put on a lead and can be controlled, and that you can, this kind of thing. Still dangerous, but under control, I think. Whereas the wolf, in terms of power, is dangerous, but without control, who misuses that power. And we're told that it's at the dawn period as the metaphor, if you like. A dog is a dawn period where you cannot distinguish between them, where it's hard to tell between a dog and a wolf. Again, it's an interesting little thing. This is basically what Gurney's got to figure out in relation to Leto. Based on her definition, is that basically, is he a dog or a wolf? And if he's a wolf, he's a problem. I suppose it's an interesting analogy. We get lots of cultural ideas within the Dune series. I suppose I've talked a wee bit about it a few times. I don't know if you ever see. Have you ever seen these up close? I mean, I'll take it off and show them to you. Of course, I'm Irish or Northern Irish or an Ulsterman or a British. Take your pick. There's my little Celtic torque. A lot of people think these are dragons, but they're not. They're dogs. They're Irish hounds. Um, Holly and noodles. Pardon me. Different cultures have different attitudes to wolves and dogs. There's a lot of cultures don't like dogs at all. Think of them of all sorts of things. Um, Dog is highly admired. The hound is highly admired in Irish culture and society and mythology. We like our dogs here. Yeah, our kind of national hero, if you like, from our national epic, Cuchulainn. Um, it's not his real name. He's called Setanta. His name literally, Cuchulainn, means the Hound of Cullen. Hound of Cullen, I think, like that. That he kills this guy's dog basically, and as a kind of recompense, if you like, agrees to be his dog for him and takes the name Cuchulainn. That's how he gets the name Cuchulainn. So dog again, I suppose, depends on what you think of dogs, what your culture thinks of dogs. Not always seen in a good light. I live in a culture where they're seen in a very, very good light. For example, as you know, I quite like science fiction about dogs. So we've got a bit of a crowd gathering around. Gurney's kind of trying to say, I've got to finish my job. You would dare test this young boy? Yes, I've got a job to do. And this basically is pointing out that I think you've pretty much done it, I think. But the metaphor that the preacher provides, Gurney says, that's pretty much close to the mark. How do you know this? And there's a crowd forming. The other thing, by the way, that it made me think of before we move on with it, pardon me, was the test from Dune, the Gom Jabbar test that the Reverend Mother Gaius Hel Mohim puts Paul through with the box, and the idea of that, we're looking for we're sifting for humans. We want to tell the difference between animals and humans. What's that? We've talked about that, because humans are animals. What's the problem there? This kind of thing. And it is a definition. We kind of get the general sense that animals, in that sense, are what the Bene Gesserit might define as psychopaths. But we've got the wolf and the dog here. This kind of thing. It reminded me of that. Something I thought was just something similar. Different language, different metaphor, if you like. So how do you know this? This is the preacher's response. Because I know this planet, you don't understand. Think how it is. Beneath the surface, there are rocks, dirt, sediment, sand. That's the planet's memory, the picture of its history. It's the same with humans. The dog remembers the wolf. Each universe revolves around a core of being, and outward from that core go all of the memories right out to the surface. So some sort of idea really there in relation to other memory, I think. Each universe suggests a multiverse, if you like. And what else? The core of being, outward from that core go all the memories right out to the surface. So it seems a similar kind of idea to that we were talking about the other week about the noosphere. The noosphere. Noosphere, yeah. Which was kind of an idea of thinking, I wonder, has Frank been playing with this, with his other memory ideas, etc. So this is Halleck's response here. Very interesting. Halleck said, how does that help me carry out my orders? Sorry, just before I go on ahead, I had a wee bit of work here on this. Backing up, just the Lady Jessica ordered you to differentiate between the wolf and the dog, between Zeb and Caleb. So Zeb in Hebrew, Zeb is wolf. So these are literal translations, pretty much. And Caleb is dog. The word Caleb comes from it, I think, which means wholehearted and faithful, and also dog. So there you go. Attributes, for example, of the dog would be wholehearted and faithful, for example, to in Hebrew. If we go with the linguistic one, Zeav comes from. We've got a reference to that as well. The wolf from the Bible is there's the story of Zeab and Oreb. Zeab meaning wolf, Oreb meaning raven. Zeab was killed at the wine press of Zeab. And then as Oreb was killed somewhere else, I can't remember. How do we nosy at the story, but I can't remember where. Both men were then decapitated and had their heads brought to Gideon. You can get the story in Judges 7, verses 20 to 25. It's the story of Zeab and Oreb. It's part of the story of Gideon. Oh, that was interesting. There you go. But essentially, wolf and dog are the words Zeab and Caleb there. Very interesting. Halleck said, "How does that help me carry out my orders? Review the picture of your history which is within you. Communicate as animals would communicate." And I've written next to this here, next to the word animals here, again with what we've just heard, is this Bene Gesserit thinking that we're getting here from the preacher. And in a sense, he's kind of, I suppose, trying to tell them to look at your own life history, your own other memory, if you can. Communicate as animals would communicate. I'm not too sure what he means by that. Woof, woof. This kind of thing. Halleck shook his head. There was a compelling directness about this preacher, a quality which he'd recognized many times in the Atreides, and there was more than a little hint that the man was employing the powers of voice. Halleck felt his heart begin to hammer. Was it possible? So voice for not just Gurney's point of view, for his benefit, sorry, but also I think for the crowd that are gathering around. And we know kind of rightly what he wants to know. Is this Paul? But was it possible he's not looking at him? This kind of thing. Jessica wanted an ultimate test, a stress by which the underlying fabric of her grandson exposed itself, the preacher said. But the fabric's always there, open to your gaze. Halleck turned to stare at Leto. The movement came to itself, compelled by irresistible forces. So he's looking at Leto directly here. A stress by which the underlying fabric of her grandson exposed itself. The fabric's always there, open to your gaze. Halleck turned to stare at Leto. The movement came of itself, compelled by irresistible forces. The preacher continued as though lecturing an obstinate pupil. This young person confuses you because he's not a singular being. He's a community. As with any community under stress, any member of that community may assume command. I wrote next to that, hell no. Oh, God, no. Hopefully not. I suppose it's possible, but you certainly wouldn't want that. This command isn't always benign, and we get our stories of abomination. But you've already wounded this community enough, Gurney Halleck. Can't you see that the transformation already has taken place? This youth has achieved an inner cooperation, which is enormously powerful, that cannot be subverted. Without eyes, I see this. Once I opposed him, but now I do his bidding. He is the healer. So an epithet, if you like, for the Leto II here. Leto the healer is what I've written next to that. He is the healer. If he's the preacher, he's the healer. Pardon me. And basically, he's telling Gurney that you've done your job. Basically, you're getting mixed up. He's not a person to see that individual in this, beneath the skin, if you like. He's a community. There's lots of people there. He's achieved the inner cooperation of that community. and that you've done enough harm to it already. The transformation's done, and it's not what you think, it's beyond that. I also opposed him. I don't oppose him anymore, is what he's saying here. He is the healer. He's the person that's going to make it all better. Who are you? Halleck demanded. I'm no more than what you see. Don't look at me. Look at this person you were ordered to. Sorry, I'll read that again. Don't look at me. Look at this person you were ordered to teach and test. He has been formed by crisis. He survived a lethal environment. He is here. Who are you? Halleck insisted. I tell you only to look at this Atreides youth. He is the ultimate feedback upon which a species depends. He'll reinsert into the system the results of its past performance. No other human could know that past performance as he knows it. And you consider destroying such a one? I was ordered to test him, and I've not. But you have. Is he abomination? A weary laugh shook the preacher. You persist in Bene Gesserit nonsense. How they create the myths by which men sleep. Are you Paul Atreides? Halleck asked. Paul Atreides is no more. He tried to stand as a supreme moral symbol while he renounced all mortal pretensions. He became a saint without a god, every word a blasphemy. How can you think, because you speak with his voice, would you test me now? Beware, Gurney Halleck. So we've got, who are you? Number one, number two. Two times he asks, who are you? We get the sense, is it possible that the preacher's Paul, not once does the preacher Paul give him a direct answer or answer him truthfully. I'm no more than this. I tell you only to look at him. I told you, don't look at me, look at him. And again, this everything about vision within this chapter, being looking directly, not seeing what's right in front of you, being blind, being willfully blind, even when your eyes are perfectly fine. There's a lot of that here. Is the abomination. Now, is the abomination? A weary laugh shook the preacher. You persist in Bene Gesserit nonsense, how they create the myths by which men sleep. So the suggestion there is the very idea of what an abomination is a myth. It's a story that's been created by the Bene Gesserit to suit a certain set of circumstances, if you like. But again, he doesn't give Gurney a yes or no here, folks. Are you Paul Atreides? And the third time he's trying to get an identity out of him. Halleck demanded, Halleck insisted, Halleck asked this time. It's specific, isn't it? It's not who are you? Come on, who are you? It's are you Paul Atreides? And again, this kind of dodging the question. How can you think? The answer is quite clever, isn't it? It's because you speak with his voice. And then you basically get, would you test me now? Beware, Gurney Halleck. A little bit threatening, I think, here, because the response is that Halleck swallowed, forced his attention back to the impassive Leto, who stood calmly observant. Pardon me. Who's being tested? The preacher asked. Is it perhaps that the Lady Jessica tests you, Gurney Halleck? And I've written next that why, after all these years, what would she be testing him apart from always probably his loyalty? But it's an interesting thought. It's one that the preacher pulls out here, and we get Halleck's response to it. Halleck found this thought deeply disturbing, wondering why he let this preacher's words move him. But it was a deep thing in Atreides' servants to obey, that autocratic mystique. Halleck now felt something changing within himself, a something whose edges had only been touched by the Bene Gesserit training Jessica had pressed upon him. Inarticulate fury arose in him. He did not want to change. Which of you plays God and to what end? The preacher asked. You cannot rely on reason alone to answer that question. Slowly, deliberately, Halleck raised his attention from Leto to the blind man. Jessica kept saying he should achieve the balance of carrots. Thou shalt not. She called it a discipline without words or phrases, no rules or arguments. It was the sharpened edge of his own internal truth, all engrossing. Something in the blind man's voice, his tone, his manner, ignited a fury which burned itself into blinding calmness within Halleck. Answer my question, the preacher said. I've written next that he's a bit of a hypocrite, isn't he? Here, the preacher, Paul, answer my question. He hasn't answered any of any of Gurney's questions. Oh, he said, are you Paul Atreides? Paul Atreides is no more. That's a lie. So he's either dodged the questions or lied to him outright. But Gurney's, I suppose it's, I think the trick within this chapter is that Gurney's looking for some sort of outside verification or validation that this is Paul. And the only way he's actually going to get it is from within himself. I think, that certainty, if you like. We get the comment about the autocratic mystique of the Atreides that they cultivate, and that this is an Atreides servant it's a deep thing in Atreides servants to obey that mystique. Is it possible? Does he sense something here of the moment, perhaps, with Gurney? Carrots, I'm not too sure about, by the way. The balance of carrots, thou shalt not. I was kind of looking into the terms thou shalt not within biblical context, this kind of thing. Couldn't find anything that matched the word. The closest I could come with it would be kairos. Pardon me, the Greek word. Kairos is what when we're teaching about a rhetoric, we tend to throw that in with ethos, pathos, and logos. The persuasive argument, if you like, this is to do with your own character as a speaker or writer, if you like, that it's your ethics is your sense of right and wrong, pathos is your sense of universal experience and struggling, logos is your sense of rationale, of logic, that you're not mad as a March hare. But kairos is Kairos, carrots would be a version of would be timeliness, if you know what I mean. The right moment to say the right thing, reading the room, that kind of idea, if you know what I mean. Pardon me. Yeah, we've got again few words in this chapter that were a bit, it's been a while since we've had something like that, So answer my question, the preacher said to Gurney. Again, I thought a little bit hypocrite. He's not been doing much answering here. Halleck felt the words deepen his concentration upon this place, this one moment and its demands. His position in the universe was defined only by his concentration. No doubt remained in him. This was Paul Atreides, not dead, but returned. And this non-child, Leto. Halleck looked once more at Leto, really saw him. He saw the signs of stress around the eyes, the sense of balance in the stance, the passive mouth with its quirking sense of humor. I was wondering, was that correct? Leto stood out from his background as though at the focus of a blinding light he had achieved harmony simply by accepting it. Gives him a kind of an almost iconic sense there, doesn't it? Let me just have a wee nosy about that word quirking. That doesn't. Let me just have a wee look in the Berkeley to see if that's the same thing. Quirking is an odd word. Quirking. Oh, I got it the same. Quirking. To quirk. To curve or twist something. Quirk your eyebrows, bending a movement, can describe a sudden, unexpected change or a peculiar detail or mannerism, like a quirk of fate. Oh, that quirk. Quirking. Is, yeah. Present participle. Yeah, that's why. Passive mouth with its quirking sense of humour. I would have gone with quirky myself. There you go. Not to worry. Leto stood out from his background as though at the focus of a blinding light. He had achieved harmony simply by accepting it. Tell me, Paul, Halleck said. Does your mother know? In other words, does your mother know that you're alive? And I think it's a very well written little thing here between Gurney and the preacher, trying to get that identity, that reveal, that Paul, the preacher, is not going to give it up, and how Gurney just deals with that, I think, is very good. We're off, are you so and so? Are you so and so? No, just you are. I'm just going to use your name and tell me, Paul, does your mother know? And it seems as much as does your mother know, it sounds almost like a childish, like a reprimand of a child by an adult. Does your mother know what you're up to? This kind of thing. I thought just interesting. Tell me, Paul, does your mother know? And the preacher's side, to the sisterhood, all of it. I am dead. Do not try to revive me. So that's a no, isn't it? Or is it? I don't know. Still not looking at him, Halleck asked, but why does she? And he's cut off. She does what she must. She makes her own life, thinking she rules many lives. Thus we all play God. But you're alive, Halleck whispered, overcome now by his realization, turning at last to stare at this man, younger than himself, but so aged by the desert that he appeared to carry twice Halleck's years. That's an interesting thing, I suppose, the desert aging you. Gurney's been on the planet for a while, but it makes me kind of question the effects of melange on the person. Uh, you know, this is Paul here seeming twice the age of Gurney, and he shouldn't be. He should be a fair bit younger than him, in appearance, anyway. So this bit I had as we go along here, I've had the preacher written whenever I've been referring to the character here. At this point is appeared to carry twice Halleck's ears. This is the bit where I swapped over and I stopped calling the preacher and started calling them Paul. Just in my own notes. What is that? Paul demanded. Alive? Halleck peered around at the watching Fremen, their faces caught between doubt and awe. My mother never had to learn my lesson. It was Paul's voice. To be a god can ultimately become boring and degrading. There'd be reason enough for the invention of free will. A god might wish to escape its sleep and be alive only in the unconscious projections of his dream creatures. But you're alive! Halleck spoke louder now. Paul ignored the excitement in his old companion's voice, asked, would you really have pitted this lad against his sister in the test Mashad? What deadly nonsense! Each would have said, no, kill me, let the other live. Where would such a test lead? What is it then to be alive, Gurney? That was not the test, Halleck protested. He did not like the way the Fremen pressed closer around them, studying Paul, ignoring Leto. But Leto intruded now. Look at the fabric, father. Yes, yes. Paul held his head high as though sniffing the air. It's Farad'n then. How easy it is to follow our thoughts instead of our senses, Leto said. Halleck had been unable to follow this thought and, about to ask, was interrupted by Leto's hand upon his arm. Don't ask, Gurney. You might return to suspecting that I'm abomination. No, let it happen, Gurney. If you try to force it, you'll only destroy yourself. And I've been wondering, is that a prediction there? And the thought, but that just backing up a little bit there, where we have this, it's Farad'n there. How easy it is to follow our thoughts instead of our senses. I'm wondering, is that a little comment by Leto on Paul that he's actually had to figure this out in his head rather than using a vision to see it? But Halleck had been unable to follow this thought. And he's about to ask, Leto says no, but what is the thought that he's not been able to follow? It's the one about Farad'n, I think, here. Rolando Sala says Farmer's Tan epic version. And Julian Thompson saying, hi Doc, hey guys. Farmer's Tan epic version. I have no idea what that means. Rolando, if you don't mind a wee second, folks, I'm just going to hit mute and run to the loo. I'll be right back. I'm just going to quickly go to the loo before I continue. So I'll be right back. And any comments or questions, fire them out there. I'll be right back. Bing, sorry about that, folks. Hello, everybody. Hello, Rolando. Hello, Julian. Farmer's Town epic version. I have no idea what that means, Rolando. You've lost me. Apologies. It's good to see you, folks. Anyway, thanks very much for joining us. Hope you're all keeping well. Oh dear. Not much further to go now, have we? So it's Farad'n then. That's who's on his way. Let's see, where do we get to? Don't ask, basically. If you try to force it, you'll only destroy yourself. So possibly a prediction there of a path that they don't want to go down with Gurney. Let's get some fluids. Oh. I was having to think about. I watched Dune again. I've promised to do a commentary on it, etc. The Denis Villeneuve one. I was having a wee look through it again the other night while I was doing my notes, and I really got to thinking how very similar the battle for Arrakis is to the Battle of Isengard in The Lord of the Rings. Swap out worms for trees and sand for water, and you've got a very, very similar thing. Just made me think about it. Julian saying, I may not be able to stay long. At a mixer for Irish Studies Masters programs at NYU. Well, say hello to everybody from Northern Ireland. Julian, to the Irish Studies Masters program mixer at New York University, NYU. Greetings and salutations from County Antrim. Excellent. Hope you have a good night. Good to say, yeah, I remember when I was doing my Irish Studies degree way back in the day, and they used to I had all sorts of We sort of shindigs. It was kind of good because I was doing the classical studies as well. And we used to do symposiums which is basically a piss up with the with the classical studies lot. And then we had to do something similar with the Irish studies with the Guinness appreciation and all of that. But yeah, excellent, Julian. No worries, and thanks for popping in. As we had to go tonight, Julian. Usually we're with the Thursdays. Just I was very, very tired last night. Would have been useless to do this. I'm afraid. Sometimes it happens, but my sleep gets a wee bit funny. But we've not much further to go anyway. And next week we're going to hopefully do a double chapter. Now, let's see. But Halleck felt himself overcome by doubts. Jessica had warned him. And this is a flashback to what Jessica has warned him, obviously. This is her talking. They can be very beguiling, these preborn. They have tricks you've never even dreamed. Halleck shook his head slowly. And Paul, God's below, Paul alive and in league with this question mark he'd fathered. I think that's a great way of thinking about Leto as a question mark. Soon to become an exclamation mark, perhaps. The Fremen around them could no longer be held back. They pressed between Halleck and Paul, shoving the two to the background. The air was shard with hoarse questions. Write that down, right? Hang on. Yeah. Pardon me. Sorry, wild hiccups tonight. Doing my best with it. The air was shard with hoarse questions. I've left out a punctuation mark there, that's all. Yeah, it's just a full stop. There we go. Are you Muad'Dib? Are you truly Muad'Dib? Is it true what he says? Tell us! Halleck, fearing what might happen if these frustrated questions find no logical answer, was about to act when Leto moved ahead of him. It was there Halleck first saw an element of the terrible change which had been wrought in Leto. A bull voice roared, "Stand aside!" And Leto moved forward, thrusting adult Fremen right and left, knocking them down, clubbing them with his hands, wrenching knives from their hands by grasping their blades. In less than a minute, those Fremen still standing were pressed back against the walls in silent consternation. Leto stood beside his father. "When Shai-Hulud speaks, you obey," Leto said. And when a few of the Fremen had started to argue, Leto had torn a corner of rock from the passage wall beside the room's exit and crumbled it in his bare hands, smiling all the while. So he's literally just ripped off a piece of the wall with solid stone and crumbled it up, all threatening and having a nice little smile for the effect. Here's the threats, I suppose. "I will tear your seats down and..." I'll do it again. "I will tear your seats down around your faces," he said. "The desert demon," someone whispered. "And your quanets," Leto agreed. "I will rip them apart. We have not been here. Do you hear me?" Head shook from side to side in terrified submission. "No one here has seen us," Leto said. "One whisper from you, and I will return to drive you into the desert without water." Halleck saw hands being raised in the warning gesture, the sign of the worm. "We will go now, my father and I, accompanied by our old friend," Leto said. "Make our thopter ready." And Leto had guided them to Shuloch. Sorry, I'll read that again. And Leto had guided them to Shuloch then, explaining en route that they must move swiftly, because Farad'n will be here on Arrakis very soon. And as my father has said, then you'll see the real test, Gurney. Looking down from the Shuloch butte. So that's our little recap that we've had all from Gurney sitting up on the butte having a think about it. This is everything that's happened prior to now to them coming here. And then we end this chapter with, back in the present with Gurney's thoughts here. Looking down from the Shuloch butte, Halleck asked himself once more, and he asked every day, what test? What does he mean? But Leto was no longer in Shuloch, and Paul refused to answer. And I've just written next to that, what test? Question mark. Is it another test mashal? Is it a Gob Jabbar moment of crisis? What is the test that leads? What Halleck wants to know here, what Gurney wants to know, and just I've put down here just tension building, and we're diving. There's got to be a lot of this stuff. Farad'n's on the way. That probably means Jessica's on the way. It means we're going to have confrontations and conclusions and etc. etc. And it's I think it's a great wee chapter where we get all this kind of interaction with Leto and the preacher at Shuloch, terrifying the heck out of these Fremen, preparing for his godhood and basically getting them to, this is going to be my home, get digging, and immediately, I suppose, having an impact upon the economy here, or the environmental economy of Melange itself. Let's see. Bojack said, I have a bit missed. After tell us, you've got, you must think of me only as the preacher. It's another paragraph. Let's have a wee look. Thank you, Bojack. Pardon me. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Tell us, let's see. Yeah. You must think of me only as the preacher. A bit messed. Right, let's find that 67. Yeah, I've missed a bit by the looks of it. Where are we? 67, 68. You must think of me. Crap. Yeah, I've missed a paragraph, a wee short paragraph. Thank you very much. You must think of me only as the preacher, Paul said, pushing against him. I cannot be Paul Atreides or Muad'Dib, never again. I'm not Chani's mate or Ember. Wow, I totally missed that out. Thank you very much, Bojack. That was kind of a really important bit there. Right, that was 60. No, it wasn't. That was 67. Right, okay. I see what I've done there. 68 needs to go in there. I will quickly. Let's see. Where can we fit it in? I can fit it in on that page. Excuse me, bear with me a wee second, folks. I quickly scribble that out here because I missed that paragraph. It's Paul, isn't it? Yes, indeed. So that's I cannot. Where? So that was after Are you Muad'Dib? This is the Fremen crowding around him. Are you truly Muad'Dib? Is it true what he says? Tell us. Then immediately after that, we should have, you must think of me only as the preacher, Paul said, pushing against them. I cannot be Paul Atreides or Muad'Dib, never again. I'm not Chani's mate or Emperor. Right. Bear with me a wee second, folks. I'm going to scribble that down very quickly. You must think of me only as. Wish I had some incidental music to play here or something. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll do that at the end. Actually, I can do that after the program's over, but there we go. Thank you very much. It is indeed. I've missed it. Occasionally happens, Bojack. I get a wee bit tired sometimes. I have been very tired the last couple of days there. 76. But Leto was. Yep, I've even forgotten to write in the last number. Leto had guided him 76, but Leto looking down, that's 77. There we go. Goodness gracious me. Yes, indeed. So don't think of me as Paul, think of me as the preacher. Really trying to destroy that identity that he has, the disinherit. We're talking about the disinheritance in the epigraph that Muad'Dib was disinherited, and he spoke for the disinherited of all time. Who alienated the individual from that which he was taught to believe. he's disinherited himself here, certainly, helping his son do it as well, but disinheriting it's not just the man, it's the myth, it's the religion of Muad'Dib. I think it's why he's quite keen to not bring Paul back, bring Muad'Dib back, bring Usul back even. What's that little bit there? I cannot be Paul Atreides or Muad'Dib, never again. I am not Chani's mate or emperor. It's the shedding of all of his identities, if you like. Various titles, ways of looking at the character. You can call him Paul Atreides, you can call him Muad'Dib. He's Chani's mate, he's the emperor, he's Usul, but now he's the preacher. And it's tension building, a little bit ominous, I think, and we're heading towards the end of the book, and it's great stuff. So there we go. We went through that. It was dialogue heavy, wasn't it? I suppose. I got through that quite quickly. Some of these chapters do run quite fast, I think. So there we are, folks. Hopefully for Thursday next week, and if not the Friday, we'll be having chapter 60 and chapter 61, because they're both quite short. So we'll run those two together. That will be the last of the double chapters that we're doing. So next week we'll be doing chapters 60 and 61. The following week is our biggest chapter. That'll be 62, and then we have two more to go after. It's 3 and 4. 3's not too bad. 4's about 10 pages. 3's quite short. 64 is about 10 pages, and that's all done. So 4 weeks, hopefully, and we'll have finished the Children of Dune book club. I've got about 4 pages left, which means we're going to have finished another volume of notebooks and into a volume 4. So goodness gracious, we'll have quite a few of these notebooks. I'll have to get this sorted. And we'll have been at this book club for 3 years or so now, with the intent of carrying on for 3 more years to finish Frank Herbert's original Dune series. We're going to also include in any short stories with that as well. I haven't finished. I can like this. But yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Bojack. Much appreciated. It's just when you're scribbling at these things all day and going from book to book, occasionally it's just you miss your hand might drop and you go with the paragraph and you've missed it. It's one of those. It's a bit like Klaatu, Narada, something like that. Oh, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking of an Evil Dead reference there, some sort of Evil Dead analogy, but it was Army of Darkness. It's more like I was thinking of. It's more like taking the drops, take 5 drops, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. Occasionally I miss a word or a paragraph or so, Goodness, Atreides said, too excited for God. I'm kind of excited. It's to get there as well. Atreides, the real danger for me was I nearly started trying to rush this at the end of it, just because I'm kind of keen to get to the end, as you do with any book when you're reading a story like this. But the whole point was to take it one chapter at a time, week by week. Read the thing as people go, and if anybody ever encounters this book again and has difficulty with it, they can read through with us in our comments and have literally everything, or almost everything. It'll not be perfect. There's things we've missed and words that we quite haven't figured out. Very few, I would add. Very few indeed. We've almost got everything, I think. We've certainly had a good work at it anyway. But yes, indeed. Very excited for God Emperor and Heretics and Chapter House. Again, for me, it's been a while since I hit these books. And I dare suspect that the amount of work that Frank Herbert's given me in annotating these novels, I'm in for an equally hard time with God Emperor, Heretics, and Chapter House, but I'd say I'm in for quite a hard time with God Emperor of Dune. I think we're going to have lots of things to look at and just to explain and try and understand, and run with Frank's ideas, and we get a massive jump in the story. We lose a lot of characters, we lose a lot of things, and even the things that we have change and transition over the time period, So it's going to be an interesting one, and God Emperor is going to be in relation to all the mistakes that we find in the books and stuff. with their publication history, which is quite ridiculous. But at the same time, the first three books are published first in magazine format, and then they arrive in novel form. God Emperor is going to be the first of Frank Herbert's novels within the Dune series that we're going to look at. That's how would you put it? Direct to novel, if you see what I mean. There's no magazine publication of it first. It's simply produced as a novel. It's not done for magazines and then fixed up. Um, Sometimes I think that's possibly part of the problem with the Frank Herbert Dune books, but at the same time, it's how everybody else works back then as well. And I don't, I've never seen, I can't think of a single science fiction book or any other kind of book, in all honesty, that has had so many mistakes in them, you know, which is a sad thing. And I've read a fair amount of books, and generally mistakes don't bother me too much. It's just very curious to see the vast amount of things that have happened here. But we're on our way to the end of the chapter. It's the bit, yeah. I'm very much looking forward to the conclusion of Alia's story in particular, I suppose, and how we bring this story to an end, and what it kind of will leave us pondering with, in relation to making our jump over to God Emperor. At a certain point, we're going to have to decide what copy of God Emperor of Jim we're going to use. Maybe open that up to the audience, if you like. I've got three or four different copies, and I think I have a reasonably modern one as well. We picked up a recent modern one. I'll have to have a nosy. But yeah, it might be interesting to see. I've generally gone when picking a book. Each time that we've gone with a copy of for the book club, um, in all honesty, my choice has been which one was easiest to read. It wasn't based on anything else. Which one's got the darkest text? Which one's got the biggest text? Just because and then whenever I write up the scripts and stuff for these, it allows me to print things up a wee bit bigger for my own benefit. But it allows us to keep a wee track of all things. And so we had a couple of etymological things for words within this chapter tonight. Not 100% on them, but we've got something for you. But otherwise, a little bit, Frank does have a tendency to pull these things out of old books and things like that. Bojack said, "No worries. The mistakes in these books have made me question everything I read now or have read in any book. I mean, yeah, errata are a fundamental part of the publishing business. People make mistakes, and it's how would I put it? You expect a few, and then the whole point is by the next edition of the book, the idea would really be that you've spotted them all and you've fixed it up and you've tidied the book up and you've put it out. And that's it. So the super curious bonkers thing is that it's not just little mistakes that have been made, Bojack. It's the fact that someone has altered the story, someone has edited things out, and someone has added things into it that shouldn't be there. So there's human hand at work in the problems with the Dune series. And if we look at the different publications, what countries they're in and what dates they run on, it really is interesting. So it'll be curious to see. I suppose the reason why I was mentioning God Emperor is it's going to be the first of the Frank Herbert Dune novels that has a different publishing pedigree, shall we say, a different process in getting it to book form. So it will be curious to see. But as I said, I think what we'll do is I'll get all the copies I have. We're 4 or 5 weeks away from the end of this book club, and I'll probably be taking a week or two to do a few things for the station and get some things organized. And probably get our first episode of Doc Sloan's A to Z of science fiction. I'm going to start with the numbers and just somebody had a wee chat with somebody about 2000 AD, which I picked them all up again recently. I think we're going to start with my A to Z on the numbers. We're going to look at things like 2000 AD, 2001, 2010, etc., etc. We're not going to include books that have a number in their title, but the number should be a word, if you see what I mean. So 1984 will be under N. But there we go. Yeah, once Bojack, I had a textbook from Had to buy it. It was an ICT textbook or computers. Sorry, not ICT. What was it? Databases and 3GL's textbook. Had to buy it for the course I was doing at university. That was the lecturer's own book. Two or three. He handed out all the at least there were lots of. It was pretty much, it was a good way of him selling the books. The books were full of errata, but he'd done two pages of printouts of all the errata and give everybody 2 pages for the copies that were, that he was selling us. In the past, I read passages in the books that I just couldn't understand and assumed I was missing something, but now I wonder if it was me after all. And there's Joseph Smith saying, check and say howdy. Bojack, no, if you've been reading these books and have been prompted, it's not you at all. So look at that. There was one that was really, really annoying. And simply put, I think it was in Dune Messiah, and it is the one time that it's the alternative identity for Gaius Helen Mohiam, and it's in my book, and it's spelt wrong. I'm not joking, but I spent about half a day running that name, trying to find stuff, and I think that's the one. I had to edit that. I think I ended up swearing or saying that so and so needed as something like that. I got slapped by YouTube for it, but that's the one where I lost my temper a little bit with it, because it's the only instance of that character's name being mentioned, and it was spelt wrong in my book. And then whenever we actually did get the correct spelling, then there was nuance and meaning to the name, and that was annoying. But yeah, it's horrendous. And we're coming towards the end of what you can call the first great Dune trilogy. So we've got how many? 60, 61, 62, 63. So we've got 5 chapters to go, 4 episodes to go. And I'm kind of hoping that we'll come to an end of it, that there'll be some, it won't carry on. But I'm yet to see how we get to, even, for example, the test Mashad there that we've mentioned there. And I was just saying, what test are we talking about here? Is it a form of the test Mashad? Is it the test for possession? Is it the Gom Jabbar test? It could be a number of things that we're talking about here. But in the very first Dune novel, depending on what copy you've got, it's either the test Mashad or it's the test Mashed. And my copy for a long time, I'd only had test Mashed, and it never made any sense to me whatsoever. And then it turns out it's not that at all. It's an entirely different word that has an entirely different meaning, But I'd say Bojack, Bojack's saying in the past I've read passages in books that I just couldn't understand, assumed it was missing something, but now I wonder if it was me after all. I pretty much do stumble over these things quite a lot, but they do not happen to any level of occurrence like this. And usually it's just something like they are little things. It might be a singular instead of a plural, or a full stop instead of a comma. They're usually minor that don't affect how you read the story, etc. But we've had some throughout the first 3 Dune books. We've had a range of mistakes, howlers, and additions that in some cases have entirely changed the meaning of the chapter and of characters' interactions, of plot, and it's been very confusing. The one good thing, I suppose, is as we've been doing this book club with all of your help, folks, is that we find them and we can point them out. So if anybody is ever reading these books and you can have this up on your screen, and read along with us. If you're hitting those mistakes, at least you'll now know. We'll explain them to you. Go, no, that's not there. That shouldn't. Was it the previous chapter? Or was it that we had to? That not one copy had the correct epigraph in it, and we had to figure it out. And between the different ones, we've got a proper epigraph. Which is interesting. So, in many senses of the word, I'm wondering that if you was that chapter 58, I think, possibly. May have been the one before, but it was simply maybe the one before. Yeah. It occurred to me that those of us who are doing this Dune book club might be the only people who've actually got a proper copy of that epigraph, because it seems that if you've been doing this book club with us, you've probably you've gone through it properly. But it seems it doesn't matter what copy of the book you've got. That's not right. That's not good. You know. And Joseph Smith saying, checking in to say howdy. Holy, you had me thinking about. I was thinking about you the other day, Joseph. I've downloaded. I have every single episode of 2000 AD. Again, I've been having a wee think about 2000 AD. Going to do a program about it. Just thinking about what were my favourite stories to chat about. And I was thinking about Robo Hunter, Sam Slade. That's Slade. And how very much he's a Mormon bounty hunter who hunts robots, and it's his little catchphrase is Holy Joe Smith, robots, this kind of thing, Holy Joe Smith, and it just reminded me of yourself. But there you go. But yes, indeed, another chapter done, folks. So going quite quickly. It's a lot of it's action oriented, dialogue oriented at the end. We're not having to do too much research at this point in the book. Whenever we are getting phrases and things mentioned, they're generally ones that we've encountered. So we're heading on just pretty much to wrap up the story nicely, as Frank does, and Frank Herbert's kind of style, if you like. And I'm very much looking forward to getting there. So I'm going to wrap up now, folks. Anyway, that'll do us for tonight. To spare the old throat. As I said, we're hoping to start producing more content and running a different night of the week as well, in tandem with the book club, which will be a kind of A to Z thing. Just be going to look at different aspects of science fiction and chatting with them. I'm going to have to try and figure out what day would be best to do that. Pardon me, and excuse the hiccups tonight. I've had hiccups all day. But there we go, folks. Anyway, I will wrap up. I'll say goodnight to you all. We'll be back, fingers crossed, on Thursday for 2 chapters of Dune, Children of Dune. There'll be chapter 60 and 61. As usual, we try to go on Thursdays at 9 or 10 o'clock. If that's not possible, we'll go the next day on Friday. But we aim to be on here for Thursday. My week's changed a wee bit with students arriving back and so on and so forth. Pardon me. But yeah, we should be back here for Thursday at 10 o'clock with 2 short chapters of Children of Dune, and then we'll just have a few more weeks. We're heading there. We're getting there. So we'll have a wee bit of a sense of achievement in about 4 or 5 weeks. We can maybe have a wee bit of a Dune party, just to celebrate having completed the first great Dune trilogy. And I suppose the other thing is, just before we go, December will be the 60th anniversary of the publication of Dune as a novel. So we'll definitely have to do some things in December. Have a wee think about it. Maybe put a wee sort of questionnaire out, something that we can all make some suggestions of. That we can do a big Frank Herbert's Dune special or something sometime in December. And as Carlos saying, take it easy, dog. Take it easy, Carlos. Look after yourself. Anyway, folks, look after yourselves. Be safe. And I'll see you all on Thursday, hopefully at 10 o'clock real soon for another 2 chapters of Children of Dune. Take it easy. All the very best. Shuloch. See you real soon. Bye-bye.